He is a loving overseer. A loving overseer. In addition to guiding us and providing for us, the Good Shepherd also provides discipline and correction in our life. And this is so important. This is the role of an overseer, to provide. It's kind of, think of it as a parent. The role of the parent is to raise up healthy children, and discipline and correction is just part of that. It's an important part of it. Job chapter 5, verses 17 and 18. Job says, and nobody experienced more of the discipline of God's hand than Job. Go read that book sometime this week. But he says, but consider, listen, this is amazing. Listen to what Job says. He says, but consider the joy of those corrected by God. Consider the joy of those who are corrected by God. He says, do not despise the discipline of the Almighty when you sin. For though he wounds, he also bandages. He strikes, but his hands also heal. Love it. Love it. Job has a certain mindset there. That God understands that we live in a broken world. And we're going to experience pushback and discipline from a broken, heartless world, period. So it's so much better for us to learn it in a loving environment from someone who cares about us. You show me a child who's grown up in a home and there's not been any loving discipline, and they've never learned where the lines are in terms of appropriate behavior. They've never learned what it feels like to bump up against the consequences of poor choices in an environment where they're loved and disciplined in the context of that love. Show me a child that's never received that kind of discipline, and I'll show you a child that is headed for a really tough road in the world. Because this broken world will discipline them, but not in a loving way. And it's so good for us to learn that. We need a shepherd who loves us and who disciplines us with love. Psalm 23 verse 4 says, your rod, again speaking of the great shepherd, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. The sheep were comforted by the sound of the shepherd's staff and rod. As he would walk with it, there was a rhythm to that, a gait to that. They knew how the shepherd walked, and they were comforted by his presence and the presence of his rod and his staff. He would use the staff to pull them out of a ditch, that crook on the top of it. He could lift them up. He would use that staff to ward off predators and defend them. But he would also use that staff or that rod to discipline them. Sheep sometimes squabble. They get into it. They fight with each other. They get grumpy. Some lessons there for all of us, right? And the shepherd has to discipline. Break in there and say, hey, whoa, whoa, whoa. You go over here. You go over there. There's a famous truth about first century shepherds, that when sheep had a tendency, when a specific sheep would have a tendency to stray often, it wouldn't stay put. What that shepherd would do is he would track him down, find that sheep, and he would break his leg. And they would carry him home. And then, when he got him home, he would nurture that sheep and tenderly care for that sheep while that leg mended. And an amazing thing happened during that season of healing for that sheep. The shepherd and the sheep bonded. An amazing close bond would develop between the sheep and the shepherd during that healing time. And so when he was healed, that sheep no longer wanted to stray. He wanted to be with the shepherd. He didn't want to go away anymore. Now listen, I can relate with this so much. I bet you can too. There have been so many times in my life when I have strayed. I've let pride lead me down a path I shouldn't have. I've let the lusts or appetites of my flesh, of which there are millions, we all deal with them, lead us down a path that I shouldn't go down. And the Lord, because he loves me, disciplined me. He allowed a hardship, a struggle, a consequence to come into my life. And he used that to break me, to break my pride, to bring me to my knees, to hurt me a little bit. Not in a vindictive way, just in a loving, disciplined way. He would allow that discipline to come into my life. And then he would love me and care for me and nurture me back. And it's always, I look back on my life, it's those times when I was broken that I learned the most about God. And it made me want to be close to my Father. It made me want to be close to the shepherd, those lessons that we learn in those seasons of brokenness. That discipline is so important. Focus on the Family. Wonderful organization. Haven't followed them much lately, but when I was a younger believer, they had a radio program. Dr. James Dobson was the president of Focus on the Family for years. And I would listen to him on the radio all the time. And he gave this great illustration one time about children at a school, at an elementary school, and the school board made a decision about their playground. Now, I know this is a dated illustration because I don't even know if kids do recess anymore. When I was a kid, that was my favorite subject, right? I was like 15 minutes in the morning, a half hour after lunch, and 15 minutes in the afternoon, man. We got to go outside and play kickball and swing and do all these fun games. It was awesome. So this was back in that day. And so somebody on the school board said, okay, we have this blacktop area, and then we have this playground kind of area just off of that. And then we have this fence. But beyond the fence, we have this huge property. It's so restrictive. We need to let the kids have more room to run and play and feel free. Let's take down that restrictive fence. They convinced the board to go ahead and do that. So they did it that summer. And when the kids came back to school that next year, something very interesting happened. They went out for recess. And instead of running out and playing, the kids all stayed up on the blacktop area close to the building. They couldn't get the kids to go out further into the field and play. You see, because what they didn't understand was that fence wasn't restrictive. It provided a boundary for the kids. They knew it was safe to go out to the fence. I could go out here because this provides a sense of structure for me. I know I'm good here. But when you take down all the boundaries and take down all the structure, all of a sudden I don't know where the lines are, and I don't know when I'm good or when I'm not good, or when I'm safe or when I'm in trouble. We need that structure, and that's what discipline provides for us. It helps us to understand this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is not good, this is helpful, this is harmful. So important. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 11. The Hebrew writer just says it straight up. It almost sounds like somebody who grew up with a loving but firm father. He says, listen. Well, I put the listen in there. He says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time. Translation, it stinks. It's horrible, right? No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. That's the whole point. It's painful. But later on, however, it produces something great. It produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Notice that word trained, not abused by it, not overdone, done in the context of love. Lots of hugs, lots of kisses, lots of, hey honey, you know I love you, but you needed to understand that choice you made is going to lead to pain. That choice you made is going to lead to difficulties in life. And I love you, so I need to teach you that. You're going to develop character. We've all heard that old saying, no pain, no gain. If we're not willing to experience the discipline of in some area, we're not going to experience the blessing on the other side. No discipline, no fruit. And God is a good shepherd. He is a trustworthy guide. He is a faithful provider, and he is a loving overseer who wants the best for us. And so he disciplines us.